working with SAP security, authorization, and GRC from the past 7.5 years and 2.5 years, respectively. In today's session, I will be talking about SAP GRC, the introduction, what are the benefits of SAP GRC, how SAP GRC manages and controls risks in a system, and how do we actually go ahead and do it in a real time environment, and what are the benefits that we draw from having an SAP GRC solution in our organization. So, what is GRC? GRC stands for Governance, Risk, and Compliance. It gives an organization the capability to reliably achieve its objectives while addressing the uncertainties and acting with utmost integrity. If it is done properly, then GRC can create a central nervous system that helps you manage your business very effectively. The goal of GRC is to help company efficiently put the policies and controls in place in order to address its compliance obligations, while at the same time gathering information that helps proactively run the business. In short, GRC helps you make sure that you do the right things the right way. And in case you're going wrong somewhere, it raises a flag, says an alert saying that, hey, you're going out of track, and this is a risk which is going to happen if you do not adhere to the rules set, designed by GRC. So it gives you a comprehensive view of what is actually going to happen before it actually happens. The second very important thing that comes into picture when we talk about GRC is segregation of duties, and in short it is called SOD. SOD means different to different people. For example, a consultant will say, I need a CPO profile which will have all the transaction codes, all the authorization objects, because I need to work on different things at the same time. So I need to have a CPO. The user calls, the business user, they call and ask you, see, I'm not able to do my job. Can you give me XK01 immediately? Can you give me MM01 immediately? And these questions are always a part of the authorization admin and the control teams. As a process before GRC, when a company will get, when a person is going to get request for a transaction code, for example MM01, what happens is the consultant, the authorization consultant, will send that request to the functional consultant of module. He will have a look and check if MM01 can be given to this user or not. Then the ticket comes back to the authorization team. They have a look, they check, and then they come up, okay, fine. If the functional consultant is saying that it must have been true, so he goes ahead, puts the transaction code in one of the roles, and gives it to the user. But with GRC, now the authorization consultant can use the GRC software to actually see and simulate the error, to see if addition of a new transaction code to a user is creating any error, or it's going smoothly. If it goes smoothly without having any issues, then the transaction code is given. If not, then it is sent back to the user saying that, hey, this is the problem, because when I go ahead and give you this transaction code, it the system comes up, pops me and tells me that no, this, if you are going to give it MM01, the existing transaction codes from a function module are not going with this new transaction code, and they are having a new risk developed. So this gives a very clear picture to the authorization consultant, even to the business, that see, addition of a new transaction code is going to create an issue, hence it cannot be given. And all these are documented properly via the tool itself. Now coming to the fourth slide, which discusses about the different modules that SAP GRC Access Control has. GRC actually has three important modules, which is access control, process control, risk management. And in access control, again, we have four sub-modules, which are access risk analysis, emergency access management, business role management, and access request management. We will talk about each and every module for access control in detail in the coming slide. So access risk analysis, before 10.0 it was called RAR, or risk analysis and remediation. It is a very helpful tool which actually stops the violation even before the risk is going to happen. When you go ahead and use this in a real time scenario, as I discussed before, even before you are going to give a transaction code to a user to carry out certain actions, the system will prompt if there is an error, and before you actually give that transaction code, you have a clear picture of what is going to happen. What if conditions are very clear using access risk analysis. It is a, as we say, prevention is better than cure, and this is a perfect example of that. Before it happens, it actually checks and gives you the clear picture of what's going to happen if you take this step. The second most important thing here is the emergency access management, which was earlier called as SPM, or super user privilege management. In super user privilege management, the user gets an idea. For example, a business user is on leave, and another user has to do a certain activity in his absence. So in that case, we need not go ahead and give that transaction code to that user, because it might create problems with the existing transaction codes, with the existing actions and objects that he has. So in that case, the user can actually go through a very secured and auditable environment in SPM, do the activities, and everything is logged and sent to the concerned managers, saying that, hey, this guy entered into this system to do this action at this time, he did so and so, and he logged out at this time. So everything is audited and everything is recorded using SPM. So that gives a very secure environment to work for. The third most important thing here is the business role management, which was earlier called as enterprise role management. It enables the enterprise role definition and maintenance in a single location. It reduces the cost of role maintenance, and before you actually go ahead and do a transaction code in PFCG, when we create a role, it actually will now tell you that if you are going to give this transaction code in this role, which already has, for example, SU01, SUIM, and you go ahead and give PFCG while creating the role, that time it will prompt you that, see, SU01 cannot go with PFCG. So please go ahead and check. I mean, this cannot be happening, so you have to keep them separate in two different roles and assign it to two different people. So this is how it works. The fourth, another important module of access control is the CUP, which is Compliant User Provisioning, and now it is called ARM, or Access Request Management. In Access Request Management, what happens is everything is automated. The signatures, the approvals, all the processes is actually now automated. That implies when a user is going to have a new SAP ID, he has to just go log in CUP, and then it will go to the different levels of signatures to the approvals. Once it is approved, the system will create the user, assign the roles, and then the user ID details will go to the user. So it helps you in actually achieving the user administration at a very, very low cost. And it also improves the productivity of end users as they do not have to wait until 3 business working days or 2 business working days, as the case it is, for a new user ID. It will happen as soon as it is done, as soon as the approvals are done, everything is in place, the system will just go ahead and create the ID for them. So in that way, it is very, very time efficient. So segregation of duties is here is an example of what I was trying to explain before. For example, if a person has both the rights to create a vendor and release a check to the vendor, then there is a possibility that the business user might create a fraudulent account and release a payment. So in that case, we have so what the solution that comes here is we should always have two different people, one to create a vendor and another one to pay the vendor, thereby adhering to the 4I principle. So it gives a very, very tight and very secure environment to work through, because when two people are involved for two different tasks, then the probability of causing a fraud is much lesser compared to one person having both the rights. So this is what happens in a access control scenario. Using access risk analysis, we get clean, which implies we get to know which transaction codes to be removed from a role if they are causing any issues, which transaction codes can be given to a sales user or which can be given to sales representative, which can be given to a manager, so on and so forth. So access risk analysis helps us in getting clean. Stay clean is maintained by the BRM, access request management, and super user privilege management. And the governance procedures, which are an integral part of the whole SOD concept, that helps us to stay in control. So get clean, and stay in control is the mantra of having a very, very secure and peaceful SOD result. Next, we'll discuss about the SOD risk management process and what are the different stages in here. The first one is when for example, the internal auditors and the external auditors, they come along and say, hey, you have got these many violations in the company and that needs to be rectified. And that point, you go ahead and when you implement GRC to overcome the errors that was highlighted during audit, or to make your system more secure, to have a stronger foothold in front of the stakeholders, you go ahead and you implement GRC. And the first and foremost important step, number one, is the risk recognition phase. In this phase, you actually go ahead and see the gaps where it is. You review the corp audit rule set, you review the rule set that comes along with GRC. Use review to see if the how can you incorporate the corp audit rule set into the GRC rule set, take base documents and combine and make a new one. Even though SAP releases the rule set along with SAP GRC solution, but it is always advisable to have your own rule set. The reasons being, as an organization, you will be having many custom transaction codes. You will be having many custom authorization objects which will not be a part of the rule set released by SAP. So, in order to actually have a better view, in order to have a better control, we should have our own rule set. So, The rule set will be defined in the second phase, which is rule building and validation. In the first phase, which is risk recognition, we actually go ahead and identify the risk and find out who is going to own which risk. That is identifying the risk owners in the business. Second most important thing is the rule building and validation. We actually go ahead and create our own rule set as I discussed before. Third very important thing here is the analysis and remediation phase, which is analysis. In the analysis phase, you go ahead and you analyze the current scenario in your organization to check if I go ahead and if I go ahead and take a transaction code from this user, what is going to happen? This is actual work. Then you actually take a transaction code off, you analyze, you check what is going to happen if business is able to run smoothly or not after you take that transaction code off or you take the object off. The fourth most important thing is remediation. Remediation happens when we see that, okay, fine, these are the errors and we have to get rid of it in order to clear the internal and external auditor requirements. So, in that case, we have to remediate certain things. We have to remediate a lot, in fact, in terms of getting rid of the errors which are caused for one user when with the violations, the SOD violations, we actually get rid of whatever we can in the remediation phase. In case we are not able to remediate properly, I mean, because there can be many reasons, and there are, for example, there is shortage of manpower, and one person is actually only entitled to do both. I mean, for example, there's only one security administrator who will do both as user 1, which is user creation, and PFCG, which is role assignment. In that case, mitigation comes into picture. Mitigation is actually accepting the risk, saying that yes, I know there is a risk in the system, but there is no way I can remediate it. Hence, I am lowering down the impact of the risk by saying that this has to be mitigated. And by mitigation, we actually lower the risk impact. So that is very important again. So the things which you cannot remediate, we have to go ahead and we have to mitigate it. Okay, so in the next, what I'm going to do next is I will get into my remote system and show you how RAR or how does it work? How does access risk analysis works? What are the important transaction codes? How do we configure, etc. So I'm logging into this system. Okay, so this is my GRC system, and the client here is 200. So I changed my client here, and I log in with a test user which I had created. Okay, and the most important transaction code here is /n NWBC, which stands for NWBC, which stands for NetWeaver Business Client. You can see all these are the SAP roles that it gives along with the SAP GRC solutions. These roles are given by SAP and they are for different activities in the GRC access control module, the process control module, and other modules. The most important role for an authorization or a GRC consultant is the SAP GRC NWBC. So I just click on here and it takes me to a new screen which says these are called the work centers, my home work center. It has different links as you can see here. Then you have setup work center, and you have different links here as well. We just spoke about mitigation, and you can see mitigation here. We spoke about super user maintenance, and we see super user maintenance here. Then we see access management, and it actually deals with the access risk analysis. And then you have your reports and analytics, which is very, very important for the auditors and also for us in terms when we have to go ahead and pull out a report for certain activity. So I go ahead and, for example, I want to do a role level simulation that I just discussed before. So I go in here and I click on the role level simulation. And the next screen that you see here is the system you have to give. This system is going to be your ECC system or the other ERP system which is connected to the GRC system. So I go ahead and I select one of these systems which is already here. And for example, I just choose this GRC 10. The role type is technical. I just give test role, which I know there is a role in the system which is X test role. Risk by process, I don't need it. Risk level, you can have different levels of risk, which is high, medium, low, critical, and all. I will put all here. The format can be different formats, but for a GRC consultant, we can put it as detail. Then we have permission level, which is your authorization object level, and action level, which is your T code level. So now we do this critical action, critical permission, and we go to the next screen. Here we can actually go ahead and add the system again, and we can give what transaction code we are going to give now. For example, I give SU01 just to check what happens, and I click on next, and I click on run in foreground here. I'm not running in background because it is just one request. In case you have lots of requests, you need to run in the foreground. So once you run in the foreground, you will actually get to know that if addition of this transaction code is going to create any violation or not. If not, then please go ahead and give the transaction code to that role and assign that role to the user. But in case, and if the role is already assigned to the user, it's all done. But in case it is a new role and the user wants to access this new role, which will come along with other transaction codes apart from SU01, then you can see. So this is how we simulate an error. We are simulating it before giving it in reality to the user. So this scenario actually helps us in checking and being more confident than before. So this is how it works. Okay, so it's not coming up as the moment. That means no violations are reported. Hence, we can move on to the next. So we can go ahead and give this transaction code to this X test role for the system GRC10. Similarly, you can do it for user level simulation, wherein you can give a user a role and check what happens. For example, system, give the system name, user, give the user group. Now they have added user group, which is very important for bigger markets wherein we have more than 10 different markets, and we want to do this only for a few markets or only for one market, for example Australia. So in that case, we need not go ahead and generate the report for everybody. We can actually keep it short, and it will happen really quickly if we give that user group only. So that makes it really, really robust. Even here you can see the risk level. If you want to see only high, it will just show you only high. Okay, so this is how it looks like. When we go ahead and discuss more about each and every module, each and every node in here, it will give you a very clear picture. But as of now, I wanted you to see how the simulation works and how access risk analysis plays a vital role in access control. So right now I'll just go back to the ABAP system, to the system, and see, the configurations, how they are made in GRC. We use the transaction code, another very important transaction code, which is SPRO. You see all this because it is an ECC come GRC system, otherwise you will just see GRC. So here we'll just drill down to GRC. Yes, here it is. So GRC, and we can actually see access control, and you can see that you can go ahead and you can, all the configurations are made here, which is access risk analysis, your role management, your user provisioning, all this configuration part is done here. By configuration, what I mean is your what level do you want to see there. For example, we just saw high, low, medium, and high was coming by default. That is because we have kept it here. Similarly, we can actually go ahead and transport these configurations to a different system. So you need not go ahead and create, if you are doing it for the first time in the test system and everything goes right, then you need not do the same thing in the quality or in production system. You can just transport the configuration settings. This again makes it really robust and very helpful. And with the new GRC10, mass mitigation is possible, which was not earlier possible. And you can also do a lot of personalized requests. For example, I get a mitigation control report for one particular user, and that must go to this manager. Everything is very streamlined, very helpful, and quite smooth, and it does not take a lot to actually use it effectively. And it's really very helpful for auditors as well, because they need not go through papers again to see, okay fine, this user was created on this date, okay fine, if everything is fine or not. But everything is now documented, everything is in GRC. They just have to go to the reports as I showed before, and then they have to go to the reports in NWBC and just check the reports if everything is fine. Whatever reports the auditor wants, that will be in the NWBC. So reports and analytics, and the auditors comes here and they do a consolidated log report, firefighter log report. Firefighter is your emergency access manager. Why, the reason codes, the transaction logs, everything is documented for audit reports here. So the auditors, that it saves a lot of time for the auditors as well. So overall, GRC, the solution from SAP, which is for managing and controlling risks in the system, is really a very robust and very helpful in terms of security, in terms of becoming more and more confident. It gives you a very good picture and helps you achieve your objectives smoothly, effectively, and being under control. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you so much. Have a nice day.